So today we're going to read chapters 11 through 13 or 14 in Stargirl. And I'll be posting some pictures or some questions about it for after you read. Okay? Hold on just a sec. All right. So chapter 11. During the first quarter of each home game, Stargirl went over to visitors section and gave them a cheer. She began with an exaggerated ball bouncing motion. Dribble, dribble, sis boom bibble. We don't bite. We don't nibble. We just say, howdy, friends. We're the electrons. Who are you? A couple of the visiting cheerleaders, maybe a fan or two, would call out, Wildcats or Cougars or whatever, but most of them just gaped at her as if to say, who is this? Some of her fellow cheerleaders were amused. Some were mortified. At that point, the only crime Stargirl could have been accused of would be corniness. But she didn't stop there. She cheered wherever the ball went into the basket, regardless of which team shot it. It was the strangest sight. The other team scores, the MAHS crowd sits glumly on their hands, while Stargirl alone pops up cheering. At first, the other cheerleaders try to suppress her. It was like trying to calm down a puppy. When they gave her the pleated skirt, they made a cheerleader they never imagined. She did not limit herself to basketball games. She cheered anyone, anything, anytime. She cheered the big things, honors, election winners, but she gave the most of her attention to the little things. You never knew when it would happen. Maybe you were a little ninth grade nobody named Eddie. As you are walking down the hall, you see a candy wrapper on the floor. You pick it up and throw it in the nearest trash can, and suddenly there she is in front of you, pumping her arms, her honey hair and freckles flying, swallowing you whole with those enormous eyes, belting out a cheer she's making up on the spot. Something about Eddie. Eddie in the trash can, teaming up to wipe out litter. A mob is gathering, clapping hands in rhythm. More eyes on you than all the previous days of your life combined. You feel foolish, exposed, stupid. You want to follow the candy wrapper into the trash can. It's the most painful thing that's ever happened to you. Your brain keeps squirting out a single thought: I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And so, when she finally finishes and her freckles settle back into the bridge of her nose, why don't you? Why don't you just die? Because they're clapping for you, that's why. And who ever heard of dying while they're clapping for you? And they're smiling at you. People who never even saw you before are smiling at you and clapping your back and pumping your hand, and suddenly it seems like the whole world is calling your name. And you're feeling so good you pretty much just float on home from school. And when you go to bed that night, the last thing you see before you zonk out are those eyes, and the last thing on your face is a smile. Or maybe you showed up at school with a really unusual earrings, or you aced a test, or broke your arm, or got your braces off. Or maybe you weren't even a person. Maybe you were a charcoal drawing on the wall done by an art whiz, or a really neat looking bug out by the bike rack. We wagged our heads and agreed what a goofy girl this was, maybe even officially crazy, but we walked away smiling and maybe not saying, but all thinking the same thing. It felt good to get credit. And if this had been any other year, things might have just gone on and on like that. But this was the year something unbelievable was happening on the basketball court. This was the year the team was winning, only winning, and that changed everything. Early in the season, no one noticed, except for the girls' tennis. We had never had good teams in anything. We expected to lose. We were comfortable with losing. In fact, most of us were oblivious to it since we didn't even attend the games. The year before, the Electrons had won only 5 of 26 games. This year, they won their fifth game before Christmas. By early January, they had won the 10th, and people began to notice there was still a 0 in the loss column. Undefeated blared a sign on the plywood roadrunner. Some said we were winning by accident. Some said the other teams were simply more rotten than we were. Some thought the sign was a joke. One thing was certain: attendance went up. By the start of February, the winning streak had reached 16, and there wasn't an empty seat in the gym. But something even more interesting was happening. Suddenly, we were no longer comfortable with losing. In fact, we forgot how to lose. The transformation was stunning in its speed. There was no apprenticeship period, no learning curve. No one had to teach us how to be winners. One day we were bored, indifferent, satisfied losers. The next we were rabid fanatics, stomping in the grandstand, painting our faces green and white, doing the wave as if we had been perfecting it for years. We fell in love with our team. When we spoke of it, we used the word we instead of they. The leading scorer, Brent Arsley, seemed to have a golden glow about him as he moved through school. And the more we loved our team, the more we hated the opposition. We used to envy them, and we even applauded them to spite our own hapless team. Now, we detested the opposition and everything about them. We hated their uniforms, we hated their coaches and their fans. We hated them because they were trying to spoil our perfect season. We resented every point scored against us, and how dare they celebrate. We began to boo. It was our first experience as booers, but you'd have thought we were veterans. We booed the other team, we booed the coach, we booed the other fans, the referees, whatever threatened our perfect season, we booed it. We even booed the scoreboard. We hated games that went down to the wire. We hated suspense. We loved games that were decided in the first 5 minutes. We wanted more than victories. We wanted massacres. The only score we would have been totally happy with would have been 100-0. And right there in the middle of it all, in the midst of this perfect season mania, was Stargirl, popping up whenever the ball went through the net, no matter which team scored, cheering everything and everybody. It was sometime in January when calls started flying from the stands. Sit down! Then came the boos. She didn't seem to notice. She did not seem to notice. All the unusual features of Stargirl, this struck me as the most remarkable. Bad things did not stick to her. Correction, her bad things did not stick to her. Our bad things stuck very much to her. If we were hurt, if we were unhappy, or otherwise victimized by life, she seemed to know about it and to care as soon as we did. But bad things falling on her, unkind words, nasty stares, foot blisters, she seemed unaware of. I never saw her look in a mirror, never heard her complain. All of her feelings, all of her attentions flowed outwards. She had no ego. The 19th game of the basketball season was played at Red Rock. In previous years, cheerleaders had outnumbered Micah fans at away games. Not now. The convoy rolling across the desert that evening stretched for a couple miles. By the time we were seated, there was barely room for the home team fans. It was the worst slaughter of the year. Red Rock was helpless. By the start of the fourth quarter, we were ahead, 78-29. The coach put in the subs. We booed. We smelled 100 points. We wanted blood. The coach put the starters back in. As we howled and thundered in the stands, Stargirl got up and walked from the gym. Those of us who noticed assumed she was going to the restroom. I kept glancing toward the exit. She never returned. With 5 seconds left in the game, the Electrons scored the 100th point. We went nuts. Stargirl had been outside the whole time, chatting with the bus driver. The other cheerleaders asked her why she left. She said she felt sorry for the Red Rock players. She felt her cheering was only making the massacre worse. Such games were no fun, she said. Your job isn't to have fun, they told her. Your job is to cheer for Micah High, no matter what. She just stared at them. The team and cheerleaders rode the same bus. When the players came out from the locker room, the cheerleaders told them what had happened. They devised a trick. They told Stargirl that someone had forgotten something in the gym, and would she please go get it? With Stargirl gone, they told the bus driver everyone was aboard, and the bus made the 2-hour return trip without her. A Red Rock custodian drove her home that night. Next day in school, the cheerleaders told her it was all a big misunderstanding and acted as if they were sorry. She believed them. The next day was February 13th, the hot seat. Chapter 12. This is how the hot seat went. It took place in the Communications Center studio. There were 2 chairs on the stage, the infamous hot seat itself, painted red with flames running up the legs, and an ordinary chair for the host. Kevin, off to the side, were 2 rows of 6 chairs each. The second row higher than the first. This was where the jury sat. It was a jury in name only. The 12 members did not vote or render a verdict. Their job was to ask questions, to give the hot seat its heat. Ticklish questions, embarrassing questions, nosy questions, but not mean or hurtful questions. The idea was to make the subject squirm, not roast. In the spirit of mock inquisition, we called the subject the victim. And why would anyone want to be the victim? The lure of TV. The chance to confess or lie before a camera and before peers instead of parents. But I doubted the usual reasons applied to Stargirl. There were 3 cameras, one for the stage, one for the jury, and Chico. Chico was the handheld close-up camera. According to Mr. Rubano, our faculty advisor, a student named Chico once begged him to be a close-up camera kid. Mr. Robino gave him a tryout, but Chico was so skinny he practically collapsed under the camera. The job went to someone else and Chico went to the weight room. By the following year, Chico had muscles, and the camera was like nothing on his shoulder. He got the job, and he was brilliant at it. He gave the camera his own name. We are one, he said. When he graduated, his name stayed behind, and from then on, the close-up camera and its operator were a unit called Chico. The host and the victim were each fitted with a thimble-sized clip-on mic. The jury passed around a hand mic. Opposite the stage was the glassed-in control room, sound-insulated from the rest of the studio. That's where I worked, wearing my headset, watching the monitors, directing the shots. I stood at the shoulder of the technical director, or TD. He sat at a rack of buttons, punching up the shots I ordered. Also in the control room were the graphics and audio people. Mr. Rubano was there as a faculty overseer, but basically the students worked everything. Kevin's job was to get things started, intro to the victim, ask a few opening questions, stir things up if the jury was slow. Usually the jury was on the ball. Typical questions like, does it bother you that you're so short? Is it true that you like so and so? Do you wish you were good looking? How often do you take a shower? It almost always added up to entertainment. At the end of the half hour, as we cued credits and music, there was always a good feeling in the air, and everyone, victim, jury members, studio crew, mingled and became students again. We filmed the shows after school and then broadcast them that night, prime time on local cable. About 10,000 homes. Our own survey said at least 50% of the student body watched any given show. We outdrew most of the hot sitcoms. We expected to top 90% for the Stargirl show. But I had a secret. I wished no one would watch. In the months since we had scheduled the show, Stargirl's popularity had dropped out of sight. Gone were ukuleles from the lunchroom. More and more kids saw her cheerleading behavior as undermining the basketball team and its perfect record. I was afraid the booze for her might spread from the court to the studio. I was afraid the show might turn ugly. When Stargirl came in that day after school, Kevin gave her the usual briefing, while Mr. Robano and I checked out the equipment. As the jury members straggled in, they were not clowning around or tap dancing on the stage as jurors usually did. They went right to their seats. Stargirl was the one tap dancing and mugging for the cameras, with Cinnamon the rat licking her nose. Kevin was cracking up, but the faces of the jurors were grim. One of them was Hillary Kimball. My bad feeling got worse. I retreated to the control room and shut the door. I checked the communications with the cameras. We were ready. Kevin and Stargirl took their seats. I took one last look through the plate glass that separated the set from the control room. For the next half hour, I would see the world through 4 monitors. Okay, everybody, I announced. Here we go. I cut the studio mic. I looked over looked over my control room mates. We all set? Everyone nodded. Just then, Stargirl lifted one of Cinnamon's front paws and waved it at the control room. And in a squeaky voice, "Hi, Leo!" I froze. I came unraveled. I didn't know she knew my name. I just stood there like a dummy. Finally, I wiggled my fingers at the rat and mouthed the words, "Hi, Cinnamon," although they couldn't hear me on the other side of the glass. I took a deep breath. Okay, ready music, ready intro. I paused. Music. Intro. This was the moment I lived for, launching the show. I was the director, the maestro. I call the shots. On the monitors before me, I watched the program unfold according to my commands. But on this day, the thrill was missing. I felt only a dark dread snaking along the cables. Greetings and welcome to Hot Seat. Kevin went through the opening spiel. Kevin loved to be on camera. He was ideal for the show like this, which made really good use of his smirky grin and arching, "Did I really hear you say that?" eyebrows. He turned to Stargirl, then impromptu reached out and stroked the nose of Cinnamon, who was perched on Stargirl's shoulder. "Want to hold him?" she said. Kevin gave the camera a should-I look. "Sure." "Ready, Chico? Rat?" I said into my handset mic. "Ready," was always the first command in sequence. Chico zoomed in. Chico. TD punched up Chico. The camera followed Cinnamon from Stargirl's hands to Kevin. No sooner was the rat in Kevin's lap than it scampered up his chest and darted between the two buttons on his shirt. Kevin yipped and squirmed. "It scratches." "He has fingernails," Stargirl said calmly. "He won't hurt you." Chico nailed Cinnamon, poking his head out from between the two buttons. Mr. Rubano stuck a thumbs up in front of my face. Kevin gave the camera this "ain't I something" face. He turned again to Stargirl. "You know, ever since you showed up at school this year, we've been wanting to put you on the hot seat." Stargirl stared at him. She turned to the live camera. Her eyes were growing wider. Something was happening. And wider. "Chico!" I barked. Chico moved in, crouching, giving it a little upshot. "Terrific. Closer. Closer." Stargirl's wonderstruck eyes practically filled the screen. I checked the long shot monitor. She was frozen, rigid, as electrified to the chair. Someone smacked my shoulder. I turned to Mr. Rubino. He was laughing, saying something. I lifted one earphone. "She's joking," he repeated. And suddenly I saw. She was taking hot seat, literally. She was milking it for all it was worth. And judging from the blank stares of Kevin and the jury, Mr. Rubino and I were the only ones who got the joke. Stargirl's hands were rising now from the arms of the hot seat. "Ready, one," I called. "One." Camera one, not there at first, but getting it now, the long shot, nailing her as her hands came off the chair arms. Fingers spread wide. You could almost see her fingertips smoking. "Hold it," I prayed. "Hold it." As her horrified eyes swung down over the side of the chair, the hot seat saw painted flames. "Yikes!" Her scream bent the instrument dials like a palms in hurricane. The rat leaped from Kevin's shirt. The TV image quaked as my camera one man flinched, but he recovered and caught her standing now on the front edge of the stage, bending over with her rear end in the camera, flapping her hand behind her, fanning her smoking fanny. Finally, Kevin got it. He went nuts. "One, pull back, get Kevin in it. Ready, one." Kevin was doubled up, tripping out of his chair, on his knees on the stage. His laughter flooded the control room. The rat ran over his hands and hopped down the single step. "The rat!" I yelled. "Two, get the rat!" But Two couldn't get the rat because the rat was nosing around Two's feet and Two was bolting from his camera. "Chico, rat!" Chico dived. He was flat on the floor, feeding the live screen a brilliant shot of the cat heading over to the jury. The jury members scrambling, taking off, climbing onto their seats. Forget the readies. Things were happening too fast. The cameras were dancing, feeding the monitors. I barked commands. TD was punching his button rack like some hard rock keyboarder. Stargirl's pantomime remains the best I've ever seen. Mr. Urbano kept squeezing my shoulder. As he said later, It was the greatest moment in hot seat history, but because of what followed, no audience would ever see it. Chapter 13. In less than a minute, everything returned to normal. Stargirl retrieved Cinnamon, and sat back coolly in the hot seat as if nothing had happened. Kevin's eyes twinkled. He was squirming. He couldn't wait to dig into the interview. Neither could the jury. But their eyes were not twinkling. Kevin forced himself to look serious. So your name, Stargirl. It's pretty unusual. Stargirl gave him a blank look. Kevin was flustered. Isn't it? He said. Stargirl shrugged. Not to me. She's putting him on, I thought. Chico, I said into my mic, stay tight on her face. A voice was heard dimly off camera. Kevin turned. A jury member had spoken. Jury, mic up, I said. Ready, two. The mic was passed to Jennifer St. John. Two. The mic looked like a black ice cream cone before Jennifer's face. Her voice wasn't pleasant. What's wrong with the name your parents gave you? Stargirl turned slowly to Jennifer. She smiled. Nothing. It was a good name. What was it? Susan. So why'd you drop it? 'Cause I didn't feel like a Susan anymore? So you just threw out Susan and named yourself Stargirl? No. Still smiling. No. Pocket Mouse. 12 pairs of eyes boggled. What? I named myself Pocket Mouse, Stargirl said breezily, then Mud Pie, then Hully Gully, then Stargirl. Damon Ritchie snatched the mic from Jennifer St. John. So what's going to be next? Dog turd? Uh-oh, here we go, I thought. Kevin jumped in. So you change your name whenever you get tired of it? Whenever it doesn't fit anymore. I'm not my name. My name is something I wear like a shirt. It gets worn, I outgrow it, I change it. So why Stargirl? I don't know. She petted Cinnamon's nose with her fingertip. I was walking in the desert one night looking up the sky like, she chuckled, how can you not look at the sky? And it just sort of came to me, fell onto me. Kevin looked up from his sheet of prepared questions. So what do your parents think? Are they sad you didn't keep Susan? No, it was almost their idea. When I started calling myself Pocket Mouse when I was little, they called me that too. And we just never went back. Another distant voice from the jury. I tapped the sound man. Jury mic, and keep all mics open. I hated to do it. It was Mike Ebersole. I said, do you love your country? Yes, she answered briskly. Do you love yours? Ebersole ignored the question. Why don't you say the Pledge of Allegiance right? She smiled. Sounds right to me. Sounds like you're a traitor to me. Jurors were only supposed to ask questions, not make statements. A hand reached into the picture and grabbed the mic from Ebersole. Becca Rinaldi's angry face appeared on camera too. So why do you cheer for the other team? Stargirl seemed to be thinking it over. I guess because I'm a cheerleader? You're not just a cheerleader, you dumb cluck. Becca Rinaldi was snarling into the mic. You're supposed to be our cheerleader, a Micah cheerleader. I glanced at Mr. Urbano. He was turned away from the monitors. He was staring straight at the set through the control room window. Stargirl was leaning forward, looking earnestly at Becca Rinaldi, her voice small as a little girl's. When the other team scores a point and you see how happy it makes their fans, doesn't it make you happy too? Becca growled. No. Doesn't it make you want to join in? No. Don't you ever want the other team to be happy too? No. Stargirl seemed genuinely surprised. You don't always want to be the winner, do you? Becca scowled at her, then jutted out her jaw. Yes, I do. Yes, I always want to be the winner. That's what I do. I root for us to win. That's what we all do. She swept her arm around the set. We root for Micah. She jabbed her finger at the stage. Who do you root for? Stargirl hesitated. She smiled and threw out her arms. I root for everybody. Kevin, to the rescue, thankfully, clapped his hands. Hey, how about this? Maybe it should be official. Maybe one person in the whole district should be appointed to be on. He waved his arm. Everybody's side. Stargirl reached over and slapped Kevin's knee. She could wear every school letters on her sweater. Kevin laughed. She'd have to be as big as a house. Stargirl slapped her own knee. Then no letter at all. That's even better. She looked at the camera. She swiped the space before her. Out with letters. Cheerleader at large. Everybody's cheerleader. Kevin sat at attention, placed his hand over his heart. With liberty and justice and a cheerleader for all. Ebersole snarled into the jury mic. And a nut roll for all. Kevin wagged his finger. That's a no-no, he scolded. No statements from the jury. Questions only. Renee Bosman snatched the mic. Okay, here's a question. Why'd you quit homeschooling? Stargirl's face became serious. I wanted to make friends. Well, you sure have a funny way of showing it, making the whole school mad at you. I wished I had never given in to hot seating Stargirl. Stargirl just stared. Chica filled the screen with her face. Gimme! It was Jennifer St. John reaching for the mic. And out of school, too. You meddle into everybody's business. You stick your nose in, whether you're invited or not. Why do you do that? Stargirl had no reply. Her usual impish expression was gone. She looked at Jennifer. She looked at the camera as if trying to find the answer in the lens. Then she was looking away, looking at the control room. I took my eyes from the monitor, and for a second I thought they met hers in the control room window. I had been wondering when Hillary Kimball would speak up. Now she did. I'm going to tell you something, girl. You're goofy. You're crazy. Hillary was standing, jabbing her finger at Stargirl, chewing on the mic. You must have come from Mars or something. Kevin raised a timid hand. And don't you tell me no statements, Kevin. Where'd you come from? Mars or something? There. Now that's a question. Why don't you go back to where you came from? There's another question. Stargirl's eyes filled the camera. Don't cry, I prayed. There was no stopping Hillary. You want to cheer for other schools? Fine, go there. Don't come to my school. Get out of my school. Other hands were snatching at the mic. I know what your problem is. All this weird stuff you do, it's just to get attention. It's to get a boyfriend. The jurors laughed. They were a mob. Hands grabbed at the mic. Kevin looked anxiously at me. I could do nothing with all the buttons and switches at my command. I was helpless to change anything on the other side of the glass. I got a simple question for you. What's the matter with you? Huh? Huh? Why can't you be normal? Why do you want to be so different? Yeah, something wrong with us? You got to be so different? Why don't you wear makeup? They were all standing now, jabbing, jutting, shouting, whether they had the mic or not. You don't like us, do you? Do you? Mr. Rubino flipped the master toggle on the console. That's it, he said. I flipped the studio sound switch. That's it, show's over. The jury went on shouting. So that ends our reading for today.